In this one, we're taking a look at the upcoming set, Twilight Masquerade. I'm hoping to do some sort of gameplay videos before the set is actually released, so you can see how some of these decks work, how some of the Pokemon work. We're going to scroll through the list in this one, take a look at the art, what the Pokemon do, and some of the best cards coming from the set. So to start off, we've got some Tangrowth Tanglers. Let's have a look at the ability here. Jungle Body. This Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. 150 minus damage counters. That's not great. It is a grass Pokemon, but it's even, yeah, it's not really one-shot in a Zard, so we can skip over that one. We've got Slow Crunch, discard all energy. At the end of your opponent's turn, will be knocked out. That stuff never really sees much play. It's so easy to get out of with Switch and stuff. Ariados is normally quite good. Your opponent's active evolution Pokemon's retreat cost is +1. That's not bad. That can definitely add up with a few of these. Some Flora does 60 for each. Oh, 60 for each fire on your opponent's Pokemon. So, yeah, Charizard's not going to stack that many in play. I don't think that's going to see any play, unfortunately. Thwackey has the ability Boom Boom Drum. Once during your turn, if your active Pokemon has the Festival Lead ability, you may search your deck for a card and put it into your hand. That's very powerful. I don't know what has that ability. I think there might have been like a Goldeen or something that had it. We'll have a look what else. Okay, so we've got one coming up here. So we've got Diplin, Festival Lead. If Festival Grounds is in play, this Pokemon can use any attack it has twice. The first attack knocks out your opponent, and then they put another one in the active. Makes sense. So it does 20 for each of your bench Pokemon. So what can we get up to? We can get up to 5, 100. It's worth noting the translator's note here. So the way it works, or the way it's worded or translated, it won't be able to use TM attacks, which is disappointing. That was probably one of the ways you could maybe see this used. Maybe you could see Devo twice, or maybe potentially Evo twice would be quite cool. You've got the Crisis Punch. There's a few different things that would have been quite nice. You can buff its damage still, so you could use like the maximum belt. So you could do 100, 150. Still not knocking out a Charizard in a hit, and although you do get to attack twice, but I guess you're only a single prizer. Stage 1 isn't too difficult to get into play. Maybe we see something built around this Festival Lead thing. Needs the Festival Grounds. It needs the Thwackey as well. It does need quite a lot to combo, but that's unfortunate. Avenging Edge does 100 plus damage. If any Pokemon was knocked out last turn, it does 60 more. It does 320 into Charizard. Why are they... That just needs an extra 10 damage. You can put a tool on it, but it's just... Because you need that extra thing, then it makes it less viable. If that was just... I mean, it's 3 energy as well, which is quite expensive. Although it is a double... No, because you can't, because the damage doesn't work out. No. Poltergeist. It's got Storehouse Hideaway. As long as this Pokemon is on your bench, prevent all damage from and effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon. So it protects itself, which is pretty good. It's only got 30 HP, so that's quite important. There's another version that does some attacks, but you're probably going to play the safer version. And then there's a few options to evolve into here, it looks like. So you can put 4 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like, which is pretty good. Spill the tea, discard up to 3 grass energy from your Pokemon in play. It does 70 for each, so you can do 210. Because you can choose the amount of damage as well, you could potentially do 140, and then if you've got a modifier like a Defiance Band if you're behind, or a maximum belt, this can one-shot a Zard, so this could be interesting. I like seeing that we've got so many grass Pokemon. I think Charizard is in such a good spot at the moment, to the point where it's a little bit boring. I mean, everyone's just on Zard at the moment. The mirror is, I would say, of all the mirrors in the Pokemon TCG currently, it's one of the more interesting. But I think we need to see some grass Pokemon to shake things up here. Let's have a look at this one. This one says it can do for each grass in your discard, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, then shuffle those cards into your deck. So that's really nice to recover energy, but also dropping damage is always good. Then it's got Matcha Splash, 120, heal 30 from each of your Pokemon. All of the damage counters for the first attack go on the same Pokemon. Okay, that's self-explanatory, I think. I think that was fairly clear. Then we've got Ogerpom. So the regular one does 20 damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, which is fine. This one does 30 plus, so it does 30 more damage for each energy attached to both active. So you need 3. Going into Charizard, they need 2, so that's 150 plus 30, so 180. So it is one shot on a Zard. It also has built-in acceleration, so once during your turn, you may attach a basic grass energy from your hand to this Pokemon. If you attach any energy to a Pokemon in this way, draw a card. So not only is it built-in acceleration for energy, it's also drawing your cards. This could be a good Pokemon, if not a good deck built around the Ogerpon, because there are a few in this. That could be very interesting. I'd be excited to see how this deck ends up, because that's quite powerful. You can attach your turn, you can use the Teal Dance. Say you're going first, then you've got 2 energy in play. Next turn, energy on, return knockout into a Zard, because they're not going to reach you unless they put down maximum bolt straight away. But also you could have a few of these in play. You could get a few Teal Dances off. Maybe Gardenia's works with this. You would need a lot of energy in hand, so yeah, I don't know. It could be quite interesting. I think it's quite a powerful Pokemon. Outside of that, we did get a Macargo EX, which does 70 damage and your opponent's burned. Or Ground Burn, it does 140. Each player discards the top card of their deck. This attack does 140 more for each energy discarded in this way. So you could pair it with something like Team Star Grunt, which would guarantee at least 280, which is a knock into a lot of EX Pokemon, even the stage 1s like Goldengo, ignoring like weakness. V-Star Pokemon, so that's quite powerful actually. Could be quite interesting. Don't know if it's going to see much play. 3 energy, 2 of which need to be fire, is quite difficult. You're probably magma basing, and then that's lowering its health quite a lot. Infernape here has fire dancing. Once during your turn, you may attach a basic fire energy, a basic fighting energy, or one of each from your hand to your Pokemon in any way you like. Okay, so this could see a resurgence in fire decks then. It is a stage 2, so you are going to want to play it with some consistency cards, maybe with a Pidgeot line or something else to help it work. Once it's set up though, you are attaching 2 energy potentially a turn, which is pretty powerful. So you get 3 energy in play a turn. They do have to be specific types of energy, so they're only going to work with certain decks. There are a lot of Hisuian Arcanines that work with both of these energy types, so maybe there's something there. Speaking of fire, we've got the Hearth Flame Mask Ogerpon. For a fire and 2 colorless, it does 20 times damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon, so you can pair it up with like Magma Basin, Damage Pumps, other way to get damage on it. 3 fire energy, asking a little more there. You've got Magma Basin attach, maybe some other ways to get energy in play. Dynamic Blaze. 140 damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon is an evolution, it is 140 more, and discard all energy from this Pokemon. So 280 again is a good number. It's getting those V-Stars. It's getting most EX Pokemon. Still pretty good there. You see a Poliwrath. It does 120 and then 120 more if you do shuffle this into your deck. So that could be quite interesting. Could potentially see maybe like just trying to think. Potentially you could pair it with something like Mimikyu, shuffle this into the deck, throw Mimikyu in the active, and just have it as sort of a retreat Pokemon. We've seen stuff like that before with a Selgor. Obviously, this is a stage 2 though, so it's slightly more difficult to get off. Here's the Goldeen we mentioned before. That's got the Festival lead. This Pokemon may use any attack it has twice, so yeah, similar as before. Not great attacks though. Again, just a translator note saying it doesn't work with TM attacks. Just having a look for some more Pokemon with abilities. We've got Milotic, which says your opponent's Pokemon in play and any cards attached to those Pokemon can't be put into your opponent's hand. So that's going to stop stuff like Penny, stuff like Turo, stuff like... what other good examples are there? I think they're probably the big ones. This is actually quite powerful. Stopping, because we've seen Charizard focus on 2 Turo and Power Pad, or Team Cheer, Yell Cheer, whatever it is. So this actually could be quite powerful against that. It's good into control, so they can't keep scooping up their Pokemon and reusing them. I think teching this into a deck massively improves your control matchup, so this could be an interesting card going into the new format where so many things about control are just firing on all cylinders. Very excited for this. So we've got Glalie and Frostlass. Frostlass, very cool Pokemon. Got the ability Freezing Curtain. During Pokemon Checkup, put 1 damage counter on each Pokemon in play with an ability, except any Frostlass. Now obviously you can have 4 of these in play, so that starts to add up very quickly. 4 damage onto every Pokemon in the on the board with abilities. Most Pokemon have abilities. You've got to think Chenpao, Baxcalibur, we've got Bibarels, we've got Charizards, even the Charmeleons. We've got literally so many Pokemon, all the comp phase. Every deck is just chock full of abilities, and Frostlass could be a very nice counter into that. It does also pair with Glalie itself, and they evolve from the same Pokemon. So it does 20 plus 20 damage, times 20 damage, sorry, for each damage counter on your opponent's active. This could be quite a cool combination. We do get to see a... Oh, no, we don't. Oh, the Greninja's the EX. We will get to that. Very cool Pokemon. Cramorant, what's he doing this time? Discard all energy. 120 is fine. What's Palafin saying? I know this EX is quite good, so let's take a look at Palafin itself. 0 to hero. Once during your turn, when this Pokemon moves from the active to the bench, you may search your deck for an EX and switch it with this Pokemon. So that works with this attack and ability. Put this Pokemon into play only with the effect of Palafin's 0 to hero ability. That is the only way you're getting into this form of Palafin, which is very powerful. It does 250, and during your next turn you can't attack, but 250 is a massive number for one water energy. Obviously you do need to sort of use it in conjunction with the ability, but there's a reason for that, because it's a very powerful Pokemon. 340 HP, 1 energy, 250 is absolutely insane. So potentially we could see this. It is going to be a very slow deck, so potentially not as well. Walking Wake, 20, put up to 9 damage counters on this Pokemon, 20 for each damage counter you place this way. That's quite powerful, especially for a single prizer. Absolutely wouldn't be shocked to see that in some water box decks. We've got a Wellspring Mask Ogerpom here. It does Sob, not retreat, that's fine. And then Torrential Pump, it does 100 damage. You may shuffle 3 energy attached to this Pokemon into your deck. If you do, this attack does 120 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Now this is just a slightly more powerful Radiant Greninja. It is still a basic. It's worth 2 prizes though, but it does a little more damage. Obviously the 120 able to reach stuff like the Bibarel, where Radiant Greninja can't quite. Also, you're not discarding the energy, it's shuffled back into your deck. Maybe slightly more difficult though, because obviously you've got stuff like Superiors to get it from the discard pile, where this is going to struggle to get it from the deck. I guess you play a ton more Earthen Vessel and just keep recycling that energy with something like Baxcalibur, or potentially in an Ogerpom list like we spoke about before. I think this is going to be quite powerful. Obviously the Greninja does something very similar to like the Rapid Strike. Slightly more damage than this, but this is a basic. I think Greninja being a stage 2, people are going to want it to work a little more than it maybe will. Stage 2s are very difficult to use. Obviously Charizard's doing quite well at the moment, so maybe we see it with something like Pidgeot into some kind of control with Greninja. And speaking of control, one of the shining lights coming from control is the Luxray EX. Piercing Glare does 120 damage, which the damage is definitely relevant. You can knock out stuff like, you can boss in a Bibarel or counter catcher a Bibarel, take away their draw options, and also discard cards from the hand. You choose a card you find there and discard it, which is absolutely, it's not a trainer card, it's literally any card they want to get rid of. This could be very powerful. No doubt we will see some decks built around this, but how powerful, I'm sure we'll see. More Peko, let's have a look at that quickly. Once during your turn, you may look at the top card of your deck. You may discard that card. So we could potentially have a couple of these in playing, just to sort of keep milling through our deck. Not bad in stuff like Ancient, where you really don't fill your bench all that often. Obviously with stuff like the Dunsparce version is slightly more common that you do. Maybe one of these in that deck would be fine. Just having a look at an extra card. Iron Thorns EX. We've seen this one for a while now. It's got Initialize as its ability. As long as it's in the active spot, Pokemon with Rule Box have no abilities, which I think is very important. Obviously, we've seen Path go and just how dominant Charizard has become with Pidgeot. Pidgeot in general is just silly now in control. In any of these decks, it's just so powerful. So I think seeing stuff like Iron Thorns come into the format is always good. I'd maybe like to see it on something that can be sat on your bench. It would obviously have to be like a stage 1 or 2. But I do think we need maybe a bit more ability control in the game, as some of them can get quite silly, some of the more powerful ones. So no doubt we will see this. Obviously, even just forcing like a Charizard to boss something up so this ability isn't active, so they can evolve freely or use their ability freely, is massive. It means they're not using Arv in it, they're not finding other pieces they need, and it just slows them down. So potentially we see this in a few decks, not just the future stuff, but it does give future a massive buff. I think it's probably slightly better in stuff like control, where you can just leave it in the active and just chip away doing other things. We've got an Abra here with an ability. Once during your turn, if it's in the active spot, you may shuffle it and all cards attached into your deck. So this is quite cool. You can throw it into your deck and get someone else into the active, but it just holds that spot in the active until you need to. Also, it says cards attached, so if you want to put like a Forest Seal Stone just to keep it safe, throw it back into your deck, or potentially a Maximum Belt or something that you need later on, this Abra can protect that for you, which is quite cool. It's a nice way around control where they're going to try and get stuff out of your hand and potentially just get it back into your deck with Abra. I don't think the Alakazam's saying much. Let's have a quick look. Your opponent's active Pokemon is confused. Move any number of damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon to their other Pokemon in any way you like. Oh, ooh. Okay, that's actually quite powerful. Not only does it confuse the active, but you can spread damage how you want. So if you can get to like 300 on a Charizard, you can then spread it across all their Charmeleons. Not their Charmeleons, because they've got the ability. Maybe across like Pidgeys and Charmanders and stuff. So yeah, there could be a few uses for that, but it's obviously a stage 2, so it's quite an ask to get to that point. We've got Florges, which says Captivating Temptation. Once during your turn, flip a coin. If heads, switch in your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active. The new active is now confused. It's a stage 2, else that would be really good. Swirlix, we've got an ability using the Festival lead again. I will say slightly better attack. Put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Obviously you can use it twice, so that could be slightly more powerful. Screamtail EX then. Let's have a quick look. Shriek, you can use this attack only if you go second and during your first turn. During your opponent's next turn, they can't play any supporter cards from their hand. Now this is a basic, so the odds of you getting this into play is fairly high. Obviously you could start it, you can play a ton of them. And if you start it, you are laughing. You can Nest Ball, Ultra Ball. There's so many ways to get it into play. Only needing 1 energy, colorless energy. It can be splashed into anything. Setting your opponent back a turn. I think a lot of people aren't realizing how good that actually is. Like they're not going to Arven if they're playing Zard. So realistically, unless they have it in hand, they're not going to set up. They're not going to Iono you and other things. So yeah, this could be really interesting. I'm excited to see if anything comes from that. Then we've got Monkey Dory, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce that other one. Let's look at Monkey Dory first. So if this Pokemon has any dark energy attached, you may use this ability. Once during your turn, move up to 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponents. So that's really nice. In a format where one-hit knockouts aren't that common, with the main deck being Charizard, like 180 isn't knocking most stuff out. Being able to move some of that off onto a different Pokemon means you can probably survive an attack in a lot of cases. So that could be quite interesting. A few of these in play. Obviously you do need dark energy in the deck, so maybe just trying to think where it would be more relevant. Maybe in something like the ancient stuff is the only stuff playing dark at the moment. That could be quite interesting. This one says, if any damage is done to this Pokemon by attacks, and this Pokemon has dark energy, flip a coin. If heads, prevent the damage. So always a very powerful attack. Also does 30 times the amount of energy attached to this Pokemon. So probably really good in like a Xatu box with the Espathra and other things. Pile energy onto this with Xatus. And then if it's got any dark in there, you probably want to play a couple of dark. It can just prevent damage on a coin flip. Very powerful ability there. And the Conkeldurr is very interesting. So it's got Gutsy Swing for 250. If this Pokemon is affected by a special condition, however, ignore all energy in this Pokemon's attack cost. That's insane. 250 for no energy that's bonkers. I'm very excited to see if anything actually combos with this though, because we would need something like the Curry, which is just rotated, to actually continually throw conditions on this. It's also a stage 2, so it's not the easiest thing in the world to get into play. But here's the Greninja everyone's been talking about. For 1 water, it can do 170. Search your deck for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. absolutely insane. 170 for a water, but also you get a benefit on top of it of finding any card you want. Is so powerful. Then you can follow that up with Duplicates Barrage, water and 2 colorless, discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. So it is 120 to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon, so potentially you could use a Turbo, which obviously lowers it to 100 twice, but it does mean you can just throw the colorless away in that case, the double Turbo. Few ways to use this. I think potentially we see it with like Baxcalibur or something. Maybe you need a way to sort of continually refill that energy. But a stage 2 in a Baxcalibur deck is going to look very different to what we see now. It's going to be interesting to see how this works moving into the new format. Obviously a very, very powerful Pokemon indeed. Okidogi, something like that. Adrenaline power, if it's got a dark energy like the other ones, it gets 100 HP. And its attacks do 100 more damage. That's not terrible. I mean, 70 damage isn't great, but that's 170, 230 health on a single prizer. That's actually not bad at all. It's just the extra energy you need. Obviously, darkness not working with the attacks. If it was fighting colorless, that would be quite nice, but it's not, so that might be a skip. We've got the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon, which prevents all damage from attacks done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Pokemon that have abilities. So very similar to stuff we've seen like the Vulpix. Attack does the same amount of damage. It's not affected by weakness or resistance or by effects, most importantly, on your opponent's Pokemon. I think that's very similar to the Vulpix attack in general. Different type of attacker though, so that could be quite interesting. And it is, again, a basic. So these things are very powerful indeed. No doubt we're going to see a deck built around them, or they're going to be splashed into a ton of decks. So I'm very excited to see how they get on. Now, here's where it gets interesting. We've got Dracloak and Dragapult. Dragapult, my favorite Pokemon from that gen, I think. Dragapult EX does some insane things. So it does 70 for a colorless, which is fine. But for a fire and a psychic, it does Phantom Dive, which is 200 damage, which is, for 2 energy, pretty good. You also get to put 6 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon in any way you like. This is going to mean we might see a resurgence in Jirachi, but if we don't, you can do 200 into the active, snipe 6 on the bench to either set up a knockout or take a knockout on like a Charmander or something. Then you could potentially boss, and if you've set up a knockout, you could do 200 to the 60 Pokemon. That's 260, 260, so that's a knockout into like 2 Goldengos, 320 health, no weakness, an absolute monster of a Pokemon. Very excited to see how this plays. This is a deck I'm going to build. And the Dracloak itself, it's got Reconnaissance, Raid, which once during your turn, look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put one in your hand, put the other at the bottom. We've seen this before with Airmail, Pidgeotto, and just on, I can't remember what the other card was. There was another card that had it anyway. It's such a powerful ability. So the fact that this is the middle evolution probably means we're going to have a few of these splashed in the deck. And it's just going to be a hyper consistent deck on top of that. We could potentially just see these again in stuff like Control, and I think that's where we're going to see stuff lean, potentially replacing stuff like Pidgeot. Obviously Pidgeot a lot better once it's set up, but these need a lot less to get going, and a few of these on your bench and you are laughing. But that's not all. That's a massive buff for GLC Dragons as well, and so is this little fella, Tatsugiri. Got attract customers. Once during your turn, if it's in the active, you may look at the top 6 cards of your deck, reveal the support you find there, and put it in your hand. Shuffle the other cards back. This is going to be incredible. In stuff like Lost Zone, obviously you can use Rescue Board to retreat for free as well. So you can grab like a Colress or a Roxanne later on, just something to draw you out of those dead hands. I think we're going to see this appear in a lot of decks. It's searchable by Poffin. Like I say, it works with Rescue Board on the free retreat. There's just so much to like about this card. I think it's going to be an absolute monster, and it's going to be a bit of a sleeper hit. Now, the other card I'm excited to play in this set is going to be the Blissey EX. It's got Happy Switch, which once during your turn, you may move a basic energy from one of your Pokemon to another. So the idea here is going to be a basic energy with Turbo. So Sharon's, once it's been hit, obviously 300 HP, nothing is really knocking this out. Unless it's a fighting Pokemon. Potentially even then, if you get like a Hero's Cape on it or some other stuff just to buff its health, it's going to be very difficult to deal with. Maybe Rigid Band all of that stuff on here. It's going to make them really, really hard to knock out. Like I say, try to loop them with Sharons and Power Pads just to keep reusing them. Normally you can't do that because Sharons takes your support of a turn, so you can't keep drawing cards. However, in this case, we've got Return, which is 180. You may draw cards until you have 6 in hand, so keep playing your hand down. Have disposable cards that you can play. Make sure your hand's thinned out, and then keep attacking, but also Sharons, so you can just keep cycling these. Potentially, you can just have an infinite loop of these. Obviously, you need some stuff to go your way, and potentially some other Pokemon like maybe a Bibarel to draw cards. Potentially, could even use the Dracloaks just to have some more consistency. This is going to be a very interesting card. 180 is a 2-shot into anything. It's got built-in draw consistency. It's got ways to help it loop. So the Happy Switch means we can move energy around. Potentially, if you have 3 basic in play at some point later in the game, you can just keep moving it around with all your Blissies and just keep things looped that way, which is quite a scary thought. Massive 300 HP, stage 1, most importantly. You can also play the Chanseys, which have the Lucky Egg ability. So if they're drawn from your prizes, flip a coin, goes to your bench and you take an extra prize. So I would love to see that. I just really want to see that in like a regionals or an internationals, or do that myself. I am going to play the deck and see how powerful it actually is though. Yeah, obviously if Greninja's quite a big thing, then maybe this isn't. Although saying that, with the Rigid Band, we do reduce enough that we could survive. We've got the Hero's Cape, so I think even then you're probably fine. Which is absolutely silly to say. It's such a tanky Pokemon. Very excited to play this one. It's going to be, I think, Blissey or Dragapult for me from this new set. I think Greninja I will leave to other people. Although saying that, my favourite card from the set is the Blood Moon Ursaluna. This is going to be more than having its own deck. Potentially you could play it in control and just keep looping it because it's such a tanky basic Pokemon. So you can just keep pennies and other things just to keep it rotating in play. But normally you're going to use its Veteran's Technique. Its attacks cost 1 colourless less for each prize card your opponent's taken. So it's basically a Radzard. Slightly bulkier health. Obviously it's worth 2 prizes. But it can just work the same. It can just be splashed into any deck though. It doesn't need the fire energy. So this is going to be, I think every deck's going to have one of these, and there's no reason not to. Such a powerful Pokemon. 240 potentially for 1 energy is absolutely insane. Also, if they take 5 prizes, that's 5 less energy. So this is going to be a free attack, which is a little bit silly. Let's take a look at some of the trainer cards then, just to finish this off. We've got Bug Catchers Set. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck. Reveal 2 in any combination of Grass Pokemon and Grass Energy. Put them into your hand. Shuffle the other cards back into your deck. So this is actually really powerful. We've already looked at the Ogapon and some other Grass Pokemon which need the energy in hand to accelerate. So this is going to be a 4 of in that deck. I think the Ogapon Grass version is going to be a deck we see played with the Bug Catchers stuff just to beat Charizard, and it is going to beat it quite convincingly. Obviously they can take return knockouts, but you're probably going to be up on the trade. This is going to be really interesting. Hopefully this does mean we see a resurgence in grass decks and a little less Charizard around. I'm a massive fan of Charizard as a Pokemon. Like, he's sat over here. One of my favorite Pokemon. He would be in my like top 6. But I do think a variation in decks is always nice. We've got Caretaker that draws 2 cards. Then if Community Center is in play, shuffle this back into your deck instead of the discard, which is pretty nice. Let's take a look at what Community Center does in a second. We've got Carmine. If you go first, you may play this card. Discard your hand and draw 5. That's pretty good. Notice it says if you go first, you may play this card during your first turn. It doesn't mean you can only play it then. You can play it other turns, but it's pretty nice. It's like a slightly worse research in general, but you can play it on your first turn to make sure you've got that hand. I think we're going to see this played in Arceus instead of research. Obviously, first turn being so important. Any deck where you need to do something first turn, then maybe we see this in Lugia. Community Center, once during each player's turn, if that player played a support card from the hand, they may heal 10 from each of their Pokemon. So you're going to be doing this every turn, potentially. Any turn you're not playing a support, you're probably losing anyway, or very much behind. So heal 10 from every Pokemon's pretty good. Nice in stuff like Gardevoir. Nice in a lot of decks, honestly, just to... A lot of stuff is mapped out in Pokemon, so you're playing this to hit this certain number. So if you can heal 10 A lot of the time it can mess with your opponent. We've got Cookback, which does 170, heals 70 from your active. Enhanced Hammer makes its return, and this is what I'm talking about here. Enhanced Hammer, discard a special, so that's going to be quite powerful, getting rid of Mist Energy. This is going to be like a 1 of or 2 of in Ancient Box or the Raw and Moon version. The EX, it's going to be in anything that you need to get rid of Mist Energy in, so it'll be in Giratina and other things. It's just it's going to be in a lot of control stuff. Such a powerful card. It's also great against control because obviously normally they Mist Energy their Pidgeot. Probably a 1 of in Charizard as well, just to counter that so they can Devo in the mirror. This is going to be in a lot of decks, so be prepared for this one. It's a very powerful card. Fable Flute is also very powerful. Reveal the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck. Put any number of basic Pokemon you find there on your opponent's bench. Shuffle the others back. So we've lost Echoing Horn. This is going to be another way for them to throw stuff like Rotom, throw stuff like Lumineon and other things onto the bench so they can then trap them. It's very much a control card. Probably not seen in any of the decks. It is just an absolute nuisance. Obviously, if you don't want to put like Pidgeots in play, you just want to focus on Charmanders, or you don't need a Jirachi Manaphy, this is going to make your life hell. It's going to be such a powerful card. I'm not looking forward to playing against this one. Festival Grounds, which we've seen mentioned a few times. Each Pokemon that has energy attached can't be affected by special conditions, which is pretty good. Handy Circulator. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is damaged by your opponent's attack, move an energy attached to the attacking Pokemon to one of your opponent's benched. This could actually be really good with Gengar. Obviously that does that as an attack. So potentially you could move 2 away a turn. So that could be really nice. Obviously into stuff like Charizard, you can throw the energy on a Rotom or something, and they can struggle to get it back into play. That's actually quite nice. I don't know if it makes Gengar viable, but I would love to see that. You can play this card only if your Pokemon were knocked out. Look at the top 8 cards, put 3 of them into your hand, shuffle the others back. So it's a good comeback card, but obviously maybe like a 1 of in some decks, not much more than that. Hyper Aroma, search your deck for 3 stage 1s, reveal them and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So amazing in stuff like Gardevoir, any deck that you need a ton of them. I would imagine maybe in like Dracloak decks, just getting all of those in play. Maybe in some control stuff, honestly, depending what actually plays the Dracloaks. We've then got Jamming Tower, which works against Gardevoir. Pokemon tool cards, both yours and your opponent's, have no effect. So this is a very important card. Not only is it good against Gardevoir, it's good against control, because obviously they use stuff like Cape and Charm and other things to buff their HP. Good against Future, Ancient. This is going to be a very interesting card, and one that we're going to see in a ton of decks just to counter those things. We've got Kieran, switch your with bench, and then you can do 30 extra damage. So it's a versatile card. 30 extra damage is actually quite important into EX and V Pokemon. And then it is a switch which can't be discarded by control, which is always good. Lana's Care, however, put up to 3 in any combination of Pokemon that don't have a rule box and basic energy cards from your discard into your hand. So it goes into your hand, which is pretty powerful. There will be some decks that need this, not many. There will be some. We've got Love Ball, search your deck for a Pokemon with the same name as one of your opponent's Pokemon. Great into mirrors, but a little risky to play, honestly. We've got Lucian and Lucky Helmet. Lucian says each player shuffles their hand and puts it at the bottom of their deck. If either player put any cards at the bottom of the deck this way, each player flips a coin. If heads, that player draws 6. If tails, draws 3. That's never seen any play. That's a terrible card. Lucky Helmet. Obviously, we've seen this a ton of times before, but if you haven't, Pokemon this card is attached to in the active spot when it's damaged, you get to draw 2 cards. I think it was just draw a card before. That's quite powerful, actually. Obviously, maybe in the Blissey deck, popping this on a Blissey, just able to draw cards. Sharon's, put it back down, just keep drawing cards via that, and its attack could be quite nice. Although a lot of times I think you want to go Heroes Cape Rigid Band. It's just slightly better into that strategy. We've got the Ogre's Mask, which choose a Pokemon EX in your discard pile that has Ogerpon in its name. Switch it with one of your Pokemon EX and play that as Ogerpon in its name. So you can just switch between the different versions that we've seen. All of the stuff stays attached, so the energy, damage, and other things. So that could be quite interesting as a deck in itself. We've got Perrin, reveal up to 2 Pokemon from your hand and put them into your deck. If you do, search your deck for up to that many Pokemon. So it's like a double Pokemon communication. You're just switching Pokemon for Pokemon, so Pokemon you need instead of Pokemon you don't. Rifut, look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may discard any number of cards you find there and put the others back in any order. So this could be quite good in Lugia. I think potentially probably just playing over cards or supporters in a turn though. But we do get quite a few A specs as well. So we've got Scoop Up Cyclone, which obviously we've seen before. Put one of your Pokemon and all cards attached into your hand, so it doesn't specify basic. You could use this on a Charizard, and it is only an item, so this could be quite powerful, able to reuse some of those Pokemon. This is why I think Milotic has a bit more value, because if this gets popular in a few decks, we've seen it be very popular before. Milotic could be a good counter to this. We've got Secret Box, which broke Twitter for a while. You can use this only if you discard 3 cards from your hand. Then you can take an item, a Pokemon tool, a supporter, and a stadium from your deck, put them into your hand, and then shuffle your deck. Obviously, for a lot of stuff, this is a massive setup. In stuff like Lugia, stuff like Ancient, where you want to discard anyway, this could be quite a powerful card. It is going to be powerful in literally any deck, but I don't know if we just have better options in most decks. I think most stuff is going to stick with the Prime Catcher, the Unfair Stamp, and other things, which I think is in this set. Yeah, so let's move on to these two, as these are the last 2 A specs. We've got Survival Brace. If the Pokemon this card is attached to has full HP and would be knocked out, it's not knocked out and its remaining HP becomes 10, then discard this. So I wouldn't hate seeing this in stuff like Charizard. Obviously they're using stuff like Iron Leaves to take a knockout. There's other, or they may potentially Giratina with Lost Impact and a Maximum Belt. This keeps your Pokemon alive. It's going to be quite a powerful tech in some decks, but again, there's so many better options. It's difficult to justify this. We've got Unfair Stamp. You can play this when one of your Pokemon was knocked out. Each player shuffles their deck. You get 5 cards, they get 2. This is going to be an absolute crushing card in a lot of cases. If you take that early prize and they Unfair Stamp you, it's just not going to feel good. We'll see it in Control, we'll see it in Charizard, we'll see it in a load of variants and a load of decks that want to just put you behind, which is pretty much every deck. If you take an early knockout and they put you down to 2 cards, if you're not set up, you pretty much just lose. So that could be quite painful. Oh, sorry, there is one more. We've got Legacy Energy. This is the one we saw in, or it's going to be played in Lugia potentially. Once per game, if a Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out from damage from an attack, they take 1 less prize. It also counts as any type of energy. This does mean you can use stuff like Iron Hands as a single prizer in Lugia, which I agree is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if there's a few better options, though. Maybe not. That's so powerful. And then we've got Boomerang Energy. As long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides colorless. If this card is discarded by an effect of an attack used by a Pokemon, instead of going to the discard pile, it comes back, so it boomerangs basically. I don't know what it's going to be used with. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I'm sure there'll be something, but I can't think right now. Let me know in the comments if you can think of anything this could be used with. But that is the set, Twilight Masquerade, just right around the corner. I'm going to, like I say, try and get some gameplay videos out of it. Let me know any decks you want to see. Let me know any you're going to be playing. That is all I've got time for in this episode, though, so I will catch you in the next one.